Okay, let's get started. My name is Michael Schachter, a Director of Product Marketing here at Allot, and I'm here today with Itai Glick, our AVP of Products. And we will be focusing on the two-edged aspect of 5G that we feel is being underreported. On the one hand, everyone is aware of the hype and the tremendous potential of this new technology with all the services and applications, autonomous driving, augmented reality, and so on, and the tremendous potential that this new technology is bringing. But as we highlighted in the webinar title, we think, and we're convinced, that there's a vulnerability that people are not talking about and that needs to be addressed, especially by CSPs, because this vulnerability threatens the very potential that 5G offers. And we'll go into that in detail in this webinar. Toward the end of the webinar, we'll also be joined by Moshe Moran. He's our VP of Sales North America, and he'll be there to share with us some insights from a very exciting win that we just got with Dish Networks, the 5G Greenfield network operator in the US, who are putting a special emphasis on this exact subject of securing and protecting the 5G network. They want to be the safest 5G network that's out there. So we'll talk about that as well. And as I said, I'm Michael Schachter, and I'll be joined by Itai Glick. The agenda is as follows. We'll talk about a little bit more about the exciting potential that I hinted at, the architecture that makes all of it possible, but the elephant in the room, the problem that we think is inherent in the very architecture that makes 5G so exciting. There are all kinds of ways to address these issues, but we believe, and we'll describe to you why and hopefully persuade you, that an inline solution that's cloud native is critical to 5G to be able to really protect the network and deliver on all of that hype. I mentioned that we'll have the special guest interview, and there will be time for Q&A. I want to encourage you to ask questions. I'll remind you during the course of the webinar, there's the Zoom Q&A button, and we will, time permitting, answer as many as we can at the end of the webinar. And we do have also poll questions that we'll be asking throughout the webinar to kind of gauge what you're thinking about some of the topics we're addressing. And we'd like to start off actually with our first two poll questions, which will help us understand who you are and get to know our audience just a little bit better, and maybe we can tune some of our information to you. So the first question I will share momentarily, and here it comes. We want to understand what kind of a service provider you are, if you are a service provider, and if not, are you an enterprise that sells to service providers or some other kind of enterprise that's just very interested in 5G technology? So give it another minute here. Don't be bashful. It helps us understand who you are. I'm reminded of my high school computer professor who said, raise your hand if you're the kind of person who never raises your hand when the professor asks questions. Okay, I think we've got a pretty good percentage here. So I will end the poll and share the results with you. A mix of fixed, mobile, and converged, as well as enterprises that sell to CSPs, adding up to 63%, and additionally enterprises who are not CSPs. Okay, and within your organization, regardless of which type you are, we'd like to know the following question, and that is, what is your role in the organization? Which department do you work in? And hopefully we will see a lot of people from security, because that is the focus of this particular webinar. But of course, happy for everyone to join. Okay, we'll end the polling now and share the results. So in fact, 42% security and a distribution of marketing, operations, and others. Okay, thank you for that. And before we get into what we are calling the elephant in the room, or the scary side of things for 5G, let's set the stage by sharing with our audience, with you, the promise of 5G with an emphasis on the technological changes, the underlying architecture in the network that make it so exciting, and as we maintain and will hopefully persuade you, also make it a little bit dangerous. So over to you, Itai.
Sure. Hi, and thank you for joining this webinar. I'm excited to talk about the 5G vulnerabilities. Let's start with a little bit background about 5G and what it gives us. And the 5G actually brings to us a very rich experience that was never seen before, starting from faster speeds, 1 gigabit per device or even more, which is the enhanced mobile broadband capability. On the bottom left of this triangle, you would see ultra high density, meaning more than 1 million devices in a square kilometer with the ultra low cost, of course, and this is extremely relevant to smart city implementation, for example, where they don't specifically demand high bandwidth, but a huge scale of numbers. And then going to the right, the ultra reliable and low latency communication. This would be useful, for example, to mission critical applications, self-driving cars, industry automation. All of those require very low latency of traffic, end to end, less than 1 millisecond, and an assured delivery. So eventually we get a huge amount of different applications that could be used in 5G. This would be a 3D video, smart city, self-driving cars, augmented reality, all of them very, very important, very, very exciting for the consumer. And we want to make sure at the end that everything really works.
Okay, so it sounds like a little bit more than just bigger, better, and faster. And I understand there is a big change, and we'll talk about that in a second. I do have another quick question or two to ask the audience, because it'll help us to understand kind of where you are within your own 5G journey. So let me get that question up to you. And here we go. The question is really, where are you in terms of a non-standalone deployment of 5G? Have you already begun deployment? Is it just in the planning stages, later this year, next year, after next year, and possibly no plans at all? Presumably, if you're not a CSP, you're not going to be, although you may be doing an industrial 5G. We'll see about that, how that develops in the future. Okay, a few more answers still coming in. Interesting. Okay, I will stop the polling and share the results with you. So a lot of no plans, but again, that may be that you're not a CSP, or it may be that you're going to stick with 4G for the foreseeable future. But it does seem that the deployment has begun and is in fact rolling out. The other thing that I'd like to ask, and sort of relating back to the last slide, has to do with at a higher level, let's say, the primary initial use cases. So what we are asking here is, do you expect to be having, mobile SIMs in mobile devices as your first main case? Or are you going the fixed route where you'll put a SIM in a home or office-based router, which I know some North American operators are looking at? Do you expect massive IoT to be your early deployment, or a combination of fixed and mobile, or maybe all of the above? And again, kind of trying to get what your primary is, but the primary may well be a mix. So it's a little bit, not tricky, but needs a little bit of thought. And the numbers keep fluctuating, so people are continuing to answer. Thank you. Give it another couple of seconds and we'll end the polling. So this is interesting, I think. A third, it's a combination. A third, it's pure mobile. And then just a few IoT, a few only fixed. So it's an interesting distribution. Thank you very much. And moving on, as I said, it's bigger, it's better, it's faster, but it's more than just that. So let's hear about that from Itai.
Sure. So what we are actually seeing is that the new 5G technology is not a step faster. It's 100 times faster than 4G, meaning you need to rethink what you've done in the 4G in order to support the huge amount of bandwidth. 1 gigabit per subscriber going up to 20 gigabit per subscriber. This is brand new and very exciting, both for the subscriber, but it involves new considerations that you need to do, whether it's in the architecture or the compute that you would need in order to handle this network. The second item, which is a lower latency, is actually the 5G ask for 1 millisecond or less end-to-end latency. In 4G, you could live very well with 40, 50 milliseconds, and even more. So again, this is 40 times faster uh, um, than the 4G. And finally, the huge amount of devices that now could be in a single square kilometer is almost 1 million devices in a square kilometer. They could easily take down a site if they wanted to, and even a small amount with a big amount of traffic can help in taking down a Mac. So as I said, the 5G is actually a game changer, changing everything that we know, and this requires us to rethink what is our solution to protect the 5G itself. In addition, we have some uh, features for better reliability, better flexibility, and an improved battery life. All of them very important, but um, might be less relevant for the specific vulnerability in the 5G or the DDoS security.
Right. So, I mean, the clear message is that we're not looking at another stepwise transition, but actually it's not an evolution, it's a revolution. And although it may be deployed in a gradual manner and in a kind of a mixed network, eventually it's going to be, pure 5G end to end. So how is this going to work, and how does that begin to, talk about potential vulnerabilities?
So I would like to first make a difference between standalone and non-standalone, where we asked you earlier in the chat. A lot of operators are using non-standalone implementation, where they actually utilized the 4G core with new radio, new 5G radio. This will give the subscribers immediately the view that they are connected to 5G and get all excited, but eventually the 4G core is the same. The latency you wouldn't get the advantages of the 5G, and because of that, you wouldn't need to really, in a non-standalone implementation, redesign how you protect the network or eventually even redesign the network. So when we are talking on the 5G, I usually refer to standalone 5G, where you have now the slicing and the max working together to provide all those beautiful functionalities we talked earlier. So now let's talk about the new items that 5G brings. The network slicing is really a very neat idea to help CSPs to provide quality of service or quality of experience to the subscribers by providing them a different network that is similar to their SLA requirements. This is actually where the promise for quality of experience for the subscribers is going into. And the second stage is actually the mobile access edge compute. And this is, I think, one of the major differences between the 5G and the 4G, where now you would deploy tens of Macs per big city, each and every one of them with a local breakout to the internet. Some cases even the Macs would be used as a cloud provider to host latency sensitive applications on it. And eventually the idea is first to save transport costs, but on the other side also to reduce latency to the internet and to connect it directly to the internet. And this will allow for a greater bandwidth for the different subscribers. You wouldn't need to reroute the traffic back to the central office like you did in 4G, and you would just extract the internet traffic directly out to the internet as soon as you're able to. This actually brings a lot of problems. We will talk more about them in the next slide.
So 5G is pretty great. I mean, it's cloud native. You've got the multi-edge access. You've got the ability to support low latency and dense IoT and all kinds of high broadband applications that maybe we haven't even thought of yet. And it's got this built-in flexibility to handle the dynamic changes and to hopefully guarantee SLAs, and QoE. The question then is, as you hinted at, where's the problem? What's the catch? And let me remind everyone that since this is a technical oriented webinar, if you have questions, you can start putting them in the Q&A window that Zoom gives us, and we will hopefully get to them at the end of the presentation. So the next question is, what's the catch? What's the fly in the ointment? Yeah.
The catch is that this new architecture is there is a critical and new capability that you need in this design. If in the past you had one core connected to the breakout and all the traffic was rerouted to there, you can implement different capabilities to protect from DDoS at that side, and you were quite good. What we have now is actually, first, we have a massive amount of IoT devices. Those IoT devices are vulnerable and can be used by malicious actors to take advantage of the network and to utilize them as botnets. And the second is the introduction of hundreds of MACs, each with a local breakout, each with 1 gigabit per subscriber. And an inside subscriber, or about 20, can take down a MAC, which is usually a 20 gigabit per second MAC. Okay, a MAC is a very sensitive implementation, sometimes deployed in a rack in a box somewhere in the city, and eventually it would be very easy for an attacker to take it down. So the new architecture actually presents a new security threat, somebody taking out a very sensitive area, this would be the MAC, by a DDoS attack, whether it's from the inside by a compromised IoT devices, and you wouldn't need a lot of devices in order to do that, or from the outside, because now this specific MAC has a local breakout, so attackers can target directly from the internet this new MAC and take it down.
So talk about your two-edged sword. I mean, 5G brings us all these great promises, and yet the MECs mean that there are lots of points to attack. The enhanced broadband means possibly larger attacks, and the massive IoT means huge armies of exponentially larger botnets that could all be marshaled to launch these high capacity attacks and at multiple points throughout the network. So DDoS has been around for a while. Do you expect it to be a bigger problem in 5G?
Well, I think DDoS is eventually a very big problem, and it's actually accelerating. We can see in this slide that the number of DDoS attacks per region actually between 2019 and 2020 is actually growing. And we actually saw the biggest attack ever on Akamai on June 2020 with more than 1.4 terabit per second of traffic. And they used, of course, multiple attack vectors. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. In the next slide, we can actually see attacks which are network layer DDoS attacks. And these are the ones that are really relevant for CSPs. And we can see that month by month in the call-out chart in the right, you can see that they are accelerating again. So even within the same year, we can see an acceleration of up to 6 times the amount of DDoS attacks in a specific month. The DDoS attack is actually going higher. We saw examples of DDoS attacks in Boy Telecom, in NZX, in Akamai, in CenturyLink, AWS, and so on. And in total, we saw 217% increase in the number of DDoS attacks from the previous year. What we see in the next slide is actually that in order to facilitate such high amount of DDoS attacks, you need to get the army ready. And what we see is actually an increase in the number of botnets that are rising. 2 examples here are GIFJIT, and the other one is, I think, presented here is, one second. And the other is a Mirai variant. And we can see in both of them, there was an increase in the number of botnets that are available for the attacker to utilize to create an attack.
So it sounds like it would be good to both proactively block the recruitment of, or isolate, quarantine recruited bots if we can recognize that, but also to stop the attacks wherever they are coming from.
Correct, and we'll talk that in later on in the presentation. But one thing I want to mention is the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity actually uh, analyzed on CSPs what is the biggest cyber threat, and it's indeed a DDoS attack. Okay, volumetric user plane attack is the #1 security threat on CSPs, and you can see on the right in the circles that the attacks are actually addressing servers, switches, routers, mobile switchers in the network, meaning that the attackers are trying to take down the network in general. Okay, not the subscriber equipment, which is only 5%. So that's very interesting analysis.
So this is showing that CSPs themselves are often the targets and not just the pipe through which the attack is traveling. But let me ask you this. I mean, DDoS and botnets are not new. They continue to be a problem. But there are techniques out there like scrubbing centers, like NetFlow, router-based solutions and so on that have been used for, for years to mitigate these attacks with varying degrees of success. Is there something different about 5G as relates to those kinds of mitigation strategies?
Sure. So our belief is that 4G solutions wouldn't work in the 5G era because of a few major advances or requirements that the 5G brings. The first and one of the most important one is that in scrubbing centers, you would need to reroute the traffic to a scrubbing center, perform the actual scrubbing, and from there route it back to the operator. This actually increases the latency on the traffic itself, and it's actually only relevant for inbound attacks. Okay. Following that, this actually also mean that you would need to do the routing or the fixing of the traffic very, very fast. And this is not really possible because today attacks is actually hit and run attacks. Okay, so it's complicated for us to reroute the traffic, route it back, and all that within 30 seconds, and you would miss the attack altogether and you would create just more trouble for the users than anything else. And finally, the latency and the jitter would also affect the quality of experience of the users. On the second part, NetFlow, which was used in protecting from DDoS, is actually good, but to the extent that it misses fragmented and bits and pieces attacks. Now, you might say that it's okay to miss 20% of the attacks, but eventually an attacker learns what you are not able to detect, and he would put pressure on that specific point to increase the attack. So although it's might be 20%, very soon after the attacker understands that this is what is passing your detection mechanism, it would do only that, and you will get 100% attacks with fragmented attacks, and you would have no protection. So NetFlow is also problematic in that. It also requires additional CPU on the routers themselves, which are doing the counting. And finally, again, very important to the 5G, it's the detection time, which is an issue. And another item is that with an inline solution, we are not only able to detect all the attacks, we can also shape the traffic to ensure a quality of experience for the user, meaning that in the period of time between the attack started and the detection by the NetFlow, there would be a very dramatic quality of experience degradation for the user itself.
So not only is 5G more vulnerable because of the architecture, but the traditional defenses are even less appropriate than before because of, as you said, introducing delays or missing short bursty attacks. So let's now talk about how Allot's solution is different and how it is especially appropriate for this new world of 5G.
So Allot solution from day one was an inline solution. And because we believed for our analysis and understanding of the network that the best way to mitigate a DDoS attack is by being inline. It will give the best accuracy, it will give the best quality of experience, it will give the best mitigation, And this is how we started, and we've been operating for many years back. Now, the 5G, with its new requirement for low latency and quality of experience emphasis, is just came into us as a place where now the inline would be a must, a mandatory protection mechanism for the 5G. And we are actually placed in the N6 and the N3 interfaces, meaning the interfaces coming from the subscriber to the UPF or from the UPF to the internet, protecting both from inbound attacks, outbound attacks, and actually also detecting botnet devices of subscribers. So this is where we are placed. And within that placement, not only we can provide DDoS protection and botnet protection, we can also provide additional value by traffic management, by ensuring the quality of experience of the user, and even with security as a service, that could be an additional revenue stream for the CSP.
So this all-in-one platform seems like a great concept. I hope we've persuaded the audience that DDoS is a threat. And along those lines, I would like to ask another poll question relating to that. We've seen, at our own customers and kind of around the world that everybody suffers from DDoS traffic. And in fact, often CSPs are spending money on increasing their capacity when in fact they've got 10, 20, 30% of their traffic being eaten up by DDoS. So be happy to hear what your sense is of your own networks, what you're losing to DDoS traffic. We've for years told customers that we can help them without even checking their network, save 10%, 20%, because everyone's got that. So interesting here. Let's stop the poll and share the results with you. Wait, anybody else still want to answer? Okay, here we go. And so what you can see here is that the biggest group sees 5 to 10%, but a full 60% or so sees even higher losses. And I think we can, assure you that the losses are higher. And that's not when a major attack is underway. That's just, day in, day out, wasted bandwidth. So it's a good idea to find a good solution. And we started to talk about the advantages of the inline solution, but Itai, you did mention multiple places where it has to be deployed throughout the network with all the mechs and the breakouts and so on. So doesn't that become an expensive solution because of all of that, deployment?
So the beauty of the 5G is also the cloud native capabilities that are embedded within the network. The entire network is built to begin with the mind of auto scaling the network to address capabilities that are scaling the network as traffic increases in different time of day and reduces the amount of compute that you require in other time of day. Especially this is important when you implement the Mac in a public cloud where you actually pay for when the compute is utilized. In addition, the same mechanism is relevant when there is a DDoS attack. So when there is a DDoS attack, you would just instantiate additional compute nodes to handle the excess traffic and to mitigate the attack. This is all done by orchestration with the cluster autoscaler that allows and set up a new node automatically. And this actually at the end reduces the total cost that you would need for an inline solution, because in the past, you actually need to be always ready, always available, always with all the compute in place in advance. And now with the Mac, possibly implemented by a public cloud vendor, you wouldn't need all the servers in advance and you would just have the servers when you need them.
So the scaling is certainly a great advantage because of the ability within the cloud architecture to adapt and scale as the threats occur, when they occur and where they occur. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. And the second the second thing that while we are inline, not only we can provide DDoS mitigation and a very accurate surgical mitigation of the malicious traffic, we can actually do what we call in-event QoE assurance. Let me explain this for a second. There is in any case some time between the start of the attack and the actual mitigation of the attack by any system. The idea in this in-event QoE assurance that in that period of time, we would reprioritize traffic for critical elements or critical applications in the network. So in any case, the abnormality that happens in the network would not affect, for example, your Teams, your Zoom, your Office 365 connection, and you would get mostly the same experience. Yes, probably high definition YouTube video in a time of attack would be not as good as you would want, but this would allow for continuous operation in the mission critical apps till we actually mitigate the traffic. And this usually happens within 15 seconds. So eventually we are able to handle and reprioritize the traffic by our unique deep packet inspection technology. And according to that, provide a better QoE even in the case of an attack and in the period of time between its initiation and its detection and mitigation.
Okay, so we can keep the important lanes on the highway flowing at satisfactory speed, and keep the customers happy and the SLAs intact. So we've covered a lot about the vulnerability, the elephant in the room, our approach and how it differs from other approaches within the industry. And let's sort of get real for a second and talk about this exciting recent win at Dish that we may have mentioned or that you may have seen about. We were selected with this exact solution to help Dish with their promise of deploying the most secure 5G network. So Itai?
Sure. So a little bit background about Dish. I assume most of you know that they initiated by satellite communication, but on the last, I think, year or 2 years, they've been ramping up toward a new Open RAN 5G network based completely as a standalone network from scratch. So they've been looking to find the right solution for DDoS. We have been evaluated against many non-inline solutions or NetFlow-based solutions, scrubbing center-based solutions, and eventually they figure out that inline solution would be the right approach for them. And in order to meet customer requirement, Dish needed to build a next generation network and architect the network with support for public cloud. And then I think also this was recently announced that they are working with AWS. So our solution, all of it will be deployed on AWS. And we are actually leveraging the capabilities, the auto scaling, the compute nodes, everything that we can from AWS to provide the customer with DDoS protection, botnet mitigation, analytics on all the traffic because we are already inline, and of course the in-event QoE assurance. Very exciting win, a very, very interesting project for us.
Okay, so let's just take a quick look at what their Chief Network Officer, Mark Rowan, had to say about it. He basically said that they need to be sure that they can detect in real time and block threats through a combination of techniques and capabilities. And as Itai mentioned, they were persuaded that inline is the way to go, and certainly cloud native, given their architecture. So we're very, very excited to be part of that project. And I have here now an interview that I conducted with our VP Sales of North America, and he's going to share with us some of the insights from the interaction with Dish. So here we are. Hello, my name is Michael Schachter from Allot Product Marketing, and I'm here today with Moshe Moran, our VP of Sales for North America, to talk about a very exciting win at Dish. Welcome, Moshe, and congratulations.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me, Moshe, what is so special about the DISH 5G network and their commitment to network security?
So DISH is the first open RAN carrier in the world. And it's something that is very, very unique. They're trying to take a very unique approach. They're a very aggressive company that is built from very, very talented individuals that took like a strategy to build a pure 5G network. And in the pure 5G network, applied the most advanced methodologies like cloud native, the network will be Kubernetes, and each component could be fully replaced by another if it breaks. You can deploy things in a faster way. So they took a very, very unique approach. On top, they took a very unique challenge, which is to, build a domestic network end-to-end in the US, compete with the other tier one carriers.
So this is a very exciting journey, as you said, and I know that DISH is putting a big emphasis on the security of the network, of the users, of the whole end-to-end experience. So who else are they partnering with, and what's the Allot role in this 5G security topic?
Okay, so DISH announced a series of vendors that will take part of this journey. In the core, you have companies like Nokia. Mavenir is playing there as well. Nokia is the one that eventually will provide the user plane that we will interface to. For enterprise and for firewall, they took Palo Alto, a very distinguished security and firewall provider, and they selected us Allot to provide the user plane protection, and also as part of it also the analytics and the DPI for 5G.
What would you say were like the key differentiators within our solution that put us ahead of the competition?
Again, being in line, the ability to support a cloud native. So even though we don't fully have it now, we show the willingness to be there in the time that is right for them, in a way that is very advanced. We showed flexibility in working with the different the different companies that they selected and are still selecting in a sense. And then again, when you're looking about the different types of attacks, I think we probably protected from the most variety of attacks because of where we're sitting. So if you look at 5G, you have the N3 and the N6 to use more technical terms, but basically we're sitting on both and protecting access from the outside to the DISH network, but also protecting the DISH network to harm from within. So this is the inbound and outbound attacks, and we had various sessions where we talked about tens of different attacks and the way that we address them. I think another unique differentiator was the fact that we can keep the quality of experience while the attack is going on. We can do mitigation within seconds. We said within 10 to 15 seconds. So that's another big differentiator. And again, another probably the biggest differentiator beyond the technology is our team. We're a very, very talented team with a lot of great people. And I think that DISH saw that. It goes from our executive team up to anyone that have worked with them. We always delivered on what we promised along the way. And for them, we were one of the more responsive and one of the vendors that they would like to work with. So we got a lot of friends along the way while working with them in the right way. So technology and team is really the differentiators.
Okay, it sounds like the first big step, but a still exciting journey ahead, and hopefully a journey that can be replicated at other service providers in North America and elsewhere.
Thank you very much for spending some time with us, and good luck with the project and whatever else is coming down the road.
Thank you, and good luck. Good luck to all of us. Pleasure to be here.
So that's an exciting story for us. It's the beginning of a really interesting, challenging journey. Congratulations to the team and to Itai for defining and managing and persuading the customer about how 5G NetProtect will defend and protect their network. So maybe this would be a good spot to summarize the different things that we've talked about, just to make sure it's clear to everybody. And again, I remind you all, we do have the Q&A window, and we do have a little bit of time after Itai's summarize. So go ahead and ask some questions if you've got. Itai, over to you.
Sure, thank you. So first, when summarizing, I want to reemphasize why Allot 5G NetProtect is needed now. So first would be the massive amount of IoT devices that are actually placed on attack from within the network. Second, the entire solution is cloud native, bringing new requirements and new advantages that you can take by being cloud native. The restriction on latency, I think, is a major event, and one of the things that require you to provide or be an inline mitigation. The growing amount of threats and the increased sophistication of such attacks, where we have seen multiple attack vectors that includes fragmented attacks, and attackers learn to know what are the attacks that are passing by any attack. Capability and the entire promise of the 5G is quality of experience. This is why an inline solution would provide you benefits even for the case when there is an in-event abnormality in the network, and we will be able to protect from it. And the sensitivity of the new MEC is another catalyst for a new type of addressing the solution, something that needs to immediately recover from a DDoS attack and mitigate it. You don't have time, and you cannot allow hit and run attacks to thrive in your network. This brings the Allot 5G NetProtect as I would say, the best solution for DDoS attacks in the 5G era, providing multiple functions in one pass, protecting the 5G user plane from malicious and abnormal network activities, starting with fast and accurate DDoS mitigation as the basic requirement, following by botnet isolation that would actually prevent recruitment of bots in the network before an attack. And finally, even the in-event queue reassurance. This is done by an inline, inbound and outbound DDoS mitigation with machine learning-based technology to prevent any attack, even a zero-day attack. We are capable to detect volumetric attacks, but also know how to detect small attacks. We are capable to automatically mitigate within 15 seconds of the attack detection. We know how to perform host behavior analysis and understand what device is malicious in your network. We combine it with threat intelligence that allow us to detect command and control communication for botnet controllers. And of course, we know how to automatically block and isolate a malicious subscriber or device of the subscriber from the network itself. All is based on our DPI-based platform, which has been developed in Allot for years. The in-event application prioritization to assure the QoE, and of course, our capability to protect the access and the capacity to critical network elements and protocols.
Thank you, Itai. I think that sums it up very nicely. And we do have a few minutes for Q&A. So if you've got some questions, feel free to use the Q&A window. I want to remind you to keep your eyes open. We will be sending you a white paper from IDC on this very topic of the the promise and danger of the 5G architecture. So I think that will be useful. The webinar is recorded and will be available online on demand at our website, and you'll get a link to that as well. So if you have colleagues who missed the session, or if you want to go back and check some of the points again, it'll be available. One more thing I want to say, besides this important topic of protecting the network traffic so that it doesn't get bogged down by malicious DDoS traffic. There is also continues, and we've seen it more and more this year with the working from home, to be the topic of securing the end user device as well. Because even if you don't have DDoS traffic on your network may be the pipe through which malware reaches your customers, the mass market, your SMBs and your consumers. Phishing attacks are growing all the time. Dangerous sites and so on need to be blocked and identified and blocked. And we do have a whole line of products that we call Allot Secure, which gives the CSP the option, the ability to sell security as a service to the mass market. So it both generates ongoing revenue for you, the CSP, and also increases the satisfaction of your customers. And we've seen that with rating surveys. It gets high adoption rates because everybody wants a safer online solution. So keep your eyes open for webinars on those topics as well. I want to thank you all again for joining us.